Well, it's great to be once again speaking to you. And today I have the great privilege of interviewing John Boyd from the Institute for Global Engagement. The Institute for Global Engagement is a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit organization, and they have a particular focus, rather like 4SA does, on religious freedom, and specifically the importance of religious freedom in the national context. And they are sponsoring a conference entitled Religious Freedom and the Rule of Law in Stellenbosch from Monday the 20th to Wednesday the 22nd of February. And we are really delighted, John, that you're coming to South Africa. Thank you so much for your investment in this nation. I know that this nation is very close to your heart too. I know you've been here many times. I think you've even lived here once before. Is that right?
That is correct, Michael. Indeed, yes. I'm a Scotsman by birth, but grew up in Africa. So Africa is really in my blood. I grew up in Rhodesia, but lived in South Africa for many years before we left to go into international mission and ministry.
Wonderful. Well, it's so great to have you coming to South Africa, and you are bringing with you a tremendous team of people who are really going to be, I believe, enriching and empowering us in knowledge which comes from international context. But let me just ask you, maybe the first question is, why is the IGE coming, and why did you decide to run this conference in South Africa?
Yeah, those are really good questions. When I consider one word that we like to describe ourselves in the Institute for Global Engagement, and that is passionate. And all of us are passionate about what IGE does. And IGE is a 21-year-old organization today and has had tremendous influence all around the world in countries that we can talk about a wee bit later, in bringing to the table the whole concept of being able to work towards catalyzing freedom of faith for all people. And so I guess you could say our mandate and our mission statement is just to catalyze freedom of faith globally, so that everyone has the opportunity to live what they believe, free from persecution. And that's why we do what we do. And additionally, bringing it to Africa for the first time. And I must confess to you, selfishly, I chose South Africa and Cape Town in the Southern African context. This will be the first time that we present our religious freedom and rule of law training summit in Africa. So it's been a process, 2.5 years of praying about it and building towards this, and finding the right partners to come alongside with us, including the funding to do this. So we are just delighted that we're bringing it to Africa, because we believe that what we've been able to do for the past 20 years has truly helped countries, governments, civil society, academics to understand the import of what we call religious freedom.
John, that's an interesting segue, because the next question I wanted to ask you is, obviously you're coming here and you have a sense of the importance of it, but why is the topic of religious freedom and the rule of law so relevant, particularly today?
If one looks broadly at the geopolitical context of our world today, and how that context affects religious policies within governments and countries, there's no doubt from what we know that, let me use the word loosely, religious persecution is on the increase in the world. And so the work that IGE does, based on the premise that everyone should have the right and the freedom to believe what they believe without persecution. So we see that happening, and we're seeing it in so many countries around the world. And this increase is cause for a little concern and alarm. So to bring it to Africa for the first time is us doing what our mandate is and what we say we're going to do, to bring together government leaders, religious leaders, civil society, and academics who operate in the sphere of religious freedom. So bringing it to Cape Town is our first step in a multi-year approach, by the way, Michael. We don't come once and then just dump it. We believe that with the right kind of partnerships and acceptance by the countries that we speak into, we like to bring this back and follow up in terms of what we do. So it's a multi-year approach.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you know, I really believe that it struck a chord, because we've been working on this since, I think it was October, November last year. And we were looking at the delegate list of those who are attending, and there really is a significant lineup of senior political, religious, legal people, academics from South Africa, and also, interestingly, from some of the surrounding Southern African nations. And we're coming together for 3 days. So it's going to be fairly intensive, but also fairly relaxed. I think there'll be a lot of time for relationship building, and maybe also hopefully getting to understand one another a little bit better, people from different faiths, from different political persuasions, from different nations. And what would you say, John, is the primary purpose of this conference?
Yeah, you know, I get asked that a fair amount. And so the ultimate objectives, so IGE's, I guess you could say our platform for this is we work to overcome obstacles of religion and culture. We're bringing together people so that we create and nurture mutually beneficial relationships. And so we're inviting all viewpoints to the table, and so that we can then develop relationships to become partners for the common good on working against religious persecution. So you're absolutely correct, Michael. The whole objective is to bring people together, and to do that, to overcome these obstacles of ethnicity or religion. And I have been very privileged over my years with IGE to have seen this happen in countries we've worked in around the world, where we've brought together people of very different faiths and beliefs and ethnicities and cultures. And at the end of that 3-day session, gosh, they're actually sitting at lunch together and talking about the differences that they have, and yet the commonality of working towards the freedoms to be able to be and believe who we are. And so that's the purpose of IGE, and it has been revelational. Can I use that word? Revelational, to see the change in certain government postures towards people of faith and religion, and amongst individuals who hold different faiths. Just absolutely astonishing.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, and I know that you are inviting, and part of the speaker lineup will be international speakers from different parts of the world where this has been run before. And I think they're going to be giving some forms of testimonial and feedback on how this has impacted the nations that they live in. And I think for us, we're very encouraged and delighted that you're coming, because I think one of the things that maybe is not fully understood is what actual freedom of religion really is. It's, I think, a lot broader than what most people think it is. And I think once fully understood, or better understood, obviously the application of that, the integration of that into the different structures in society has potentially a tremendously beneficial effect. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of a sense of what's happened in some of these other nations, if you want to just pick one where you've run this before, and what the outcomes or the results have been.
Yes, thank you, Michael. You know, I can mention the countries we've been in, because the governments of those countries have welcomed IGE in. And two in particular where IGE's work has been going on, and it is, as I say, it's a multi-year approach. It's not going to happen overnight. This is our first one in Africa. And we do trust that these will carry on in some form or context, so that we can continue building these relationships. And, you know, one of the things most people, and certainly me, failed to understand until I started to dig into more about this terminology, religious freedom. You know, IGE is committed globally to universal human dignity. You know, those of faith, whatever their faiths are, or none, for them to be persecuted for what they believe, well, I guess you just got to understand, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. And so when you think that IGE works towards a future where all people of all faiths or no faiths have the freedom of belief in their countries, And here it comes, equal citizenship in those countries. Just because of what you believe shouldn't mean that you're persecuted or excluded for things. So as we look at the future, we like to spread the word. And you made a great point. These testimonials from these international speakers who are coming will be the catalyst that helps folk understand that why religious freedom it's integral to the safety and security of a country. So there's not that disruption. So you're going to be hearing from people who've lived it firsthand, who've really lived persecution in their countries, and who've seen what happens when an IGE comes together with local partners and works towards this whole concept of human dignity and not persecuting people for their faith. So it's been very deliberate on our behalf to bring these people together to hear firsthand testimonials in terms of what's happened in some very, very, very interesting countries around the world and the changes that have eventually been made. Now, some of the countries much slower than others, but in two particular cases, Vietnam and Uzbekistan, we have seen those governments and religious leaders come together with civil society and start to enact legislation that has been so punitive before to release these persecuted measures on people of faith in their countries. It is really an astonishing work. And we are just, I get so excited about what we'll be able to do, because I grew up in Africa. Africa has a place in my heart, and to bring it to Africa is going to be such a watershed event for us.
Well, John, I can tell you we're very excited. And I think, in South Africa, that really strikes a chord, everything that you're saying, because the principles of our constitution are rooted and grounded around the dignity of every human being, and that we need to find ways to celebrate our diversity. As the Constitutional Court said, that when you talk about people of different faiths, we're not talking about a pageant of horribles. We're talking about a celebration of our diversity as a nation. And
yes.
South Africa
yes.
is a multi-ethnic, multi-faith, multicultural, very diverse and unique nation. So I think to have this level of input at such a high level is going to be really exciting. And so just closing question for you. When this conference ends, when the dust is settled, these things tend to go past remarkably fast. It's 3 days, but you blink and it's gone. But what would be the next steps that you see thereafter, and what do you hope will have been achieved?
Yeah, so let me make a statement, and let's go into the latter part. So there is no doubt, based on testimonial evidence, and you'll be hearing that from some of these speakers, and it's a truth that religious freedom is integral to a flourishing society and a stable state. Now, that's a statement I've used before, but if folk think about that for a moment, and that's what we're looking to achieve, the first of many events that we hold throughout Southern Africa. And we're looking to move into the rest of Africa if that happens. But our primary objective is to bring government leaders, religious leaders, civil society, multi-ethnic, multi-faith society people together so that the dialogue can begin and friendships can begin, so that we can start building upon this. So our role is simply to catalyze this by bringing these summits to countries. And so we're looking for continual engagement with yourselves and others in Southern Africa as we look towards a follow-up event in 2024. And from this one, we build upon it and expand a bit. And it'll be really, really interesting to see. We always follow up with folk who attend afterwards and see what they thought of it. And we start seeing avenues to opportunity opening up so that we can host these events simply to be the catalyst for religious freedom in the world. That's what we're looking to.
John, absolutely brilliant. And it's been so good of you to share your speaking to us from, I think, Washington, D.C. at the moment. And you're on your way. You're just about to jump on a plane. So thank you for the time, John Boyd, the Executive Director, CEO of the Institute for Global Engagement. And we looking forward to welcoming you to South Africa, to the Ferris Cape later in this week. It'll be wonderful to have you. So thank you so much. And we look forward to everything that's coming to pass this coming next week and as we go forward.
Yeah, and thank you, Michael, and 4SA, because quite frankly, without your partnership and everything, we can't pull this together. So I love to say this, it's a team effort, and that's the truth of it. So thank you, Michael. Looking forward to seeing you very soon.
100%. Thank you, John. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Good day. This is Daniela Ellerbeck, the Legal Advisor to Freedom of Religion South Africa. Remember to like and share this video, and then click on the subscribe button to make sure you never miss our video updates on vital religious freedom issues.